Lighting is a meticulous craft. Just setting up a single shot could involve powering and positioning several large studio lights, using a range of different modifiers on those lights, and constantly making refinements to the position and intensity of those lights. And that works for a shot like this one, but if you're shooting outside or you're traveling somewhere to shoot, you usually don't have that luxury. So you need to know how to work with what you have, which could be a small LED light panel, it could be your car headlights, or it could even just be the sun. My name is Aidin Robbins, I'm a filmmaker and YouTuber, and in this video I want to break down a bunch of different ways that you can work with and make the most of those limited lighting options when you're traveling. This video is going to be divided into 3 sections. The first being probably your primary light source when you're shooting on the road, natural light. The weather has probably the most noticeable impact over how your natural light footage appears. If you're shooting on a cloudy or overcast day, you can get wonderful, perfectly soft ambient light. But if you're shooting on a much harsher, clear day and the sun is directly overhead, you can get some pretty terrible, very difficult to work with lighting conditions. But at the end of the day, this isn't really worth worrying too much about because you don't have any control over it. So you just need to learn how to work with it. Time of day can also have a pretty noticeable impact on natural light, so it's typically best to avoid shooting towards the middle of the day when you get that really harsh, directly overhead light. It creates really harsh, just unflattering shadows and lighting overall. So it's typically best to try shooting earlier and later in the day when possible. Golden hour is the time right after the sun rises and right before it sets, when you get softer shadows and more directional light from the sun. So it's a good one to get a softer, more flattering, kind of warm look in your footage. Then you have sunrise and sunset itself, which is a bit of a loose cannon. It can be amazing, but it can also be disappointing. So it's not something to really bank on for your footage. It's more just an added bonus if you do get a nice banger sunrise or sunset, but not something to count on for your shot list. And finally, the most slept on time of day to shoot, blue hour. Right before sunrise and right after sunset, when you still have enough light to shoot, but it looks very dark and kind of dusky and has a nice blue cast over everything. Blue hour is great for a couple reasons. First of all, it just looks really pretty. You have that nice blue cast, which can create some color contrast, and you have that nice dark ambience to the scene, so any lighting that you do add in will really pop off of that natural light. But it's also the only time of day that you can really count on. So whether it's completely clear or it's completely overcast, you're always gonna get that blue cast around blue hour, unless there's some natural anomaly that I don't know about and something just goes wrong. But for the most part, blue hour is a short, beautiful little window that you can always count on to get some really good footage. There are also a few things you can do to modify and work better with natural light if it's not working for your scene. If you do have to work in that harsher, more directional light, for example, you could try just going in the shade if there is shade in the location you're shooting at, and this will just give you more even, soft lighting on your subject. You can also try backlighting by placing the subject between the sun and the camera. This just gives you more depth and contrast and makes for a more cinematic look overall. It's pretty much the best way to work with terrible, harsh lighting and make it look less awful. You can also try bringing along a bounce or reflector so that you can bounce some of that natural light back onto your subject, or soften that light with the diffuser before it actually hits your subject. Now let's move on and talk a bit about practicals. And these are light sources that are a part of the scene. They're usually visible in the shot and typically not made to be used for film. So my personal favorites, car headlights and hiking headlamps. So super simple, whenever I'm shooting a car, I'll just make sure, flick those high beams on, and then you get a little bit of extra light to add some extra contrast and depth into the scene. It's that simple, just working with the lights that are already in the scene. And then headlamps. I honestly can't remember the last time I made a film that didn't use a headlamp or two as light sources in some of the footage. They not only make sense for the scenes in question and add kind of that outdoorsy, adventurous vibe to them, but they also light the face of the subject in the scene and create some contrast between that skin tone, which is being lit, and the background, which is dark. Other examples of practicals could be lamps or even phone and computer screens. So just keep an eye out whenever you're shooting for lighting opportunities using what you already have on you or what's already in front of the camera. And finally, let's talk about artificial lighting. These are lights that you're adding into the scene. They're not visible to the camera, and they're made specifically for shooting video. My favorites are small LED light panels. I carry 2 of these around in my camera bag everywhere I go to shoot because I can carry them around really easily and just chuck them into the scene. They're battery powered, so I don't have to worry about finding power for them, and they can easily be hidden in pretty much any location. It would be a little inconvenient to lug this big 120D studio light around on a hiking shoot. If I want more emphasis on a certain part of the scene, I'll just chuck one of these little light panels in. That could be behind a couch in the background of a shot. It could be inside of a tent. Pretty much anywhere. It's super easy, and that's why these are so great. Personally, I carry around a Lume Cube Panel Pro and a Lume Cube Panel Mini. I'm actually using them both to light the background in this scene, and other companies like Aperture have similar products you can use, and these are just a great option for traveling because you get pretty good light and solid control over the light without having to worry about power or having a massive heavy setup to lug around. And of course, this stuff is all subjective and varies from person to person and project to project. I like to use lights like these because I'm almost always shooting outdoors and hiking, but depending on what you're doing, it could make sense to take, a big studio light like this one on a trip with you and set it up to get a certain shot. It really depends on the certain scenario in question. So whether you're working with natural light, with practicals in the shot, or with artificial lights that you carry around in your camera bag, I hope this video helped you pick up some new techniques for making the most of whatever you're working with. Just remember, when it comes to lighting and filmmaking in general, being meticulous is important, but being adaptable is more important. All that being said, I hope you've enjoyed this one, learned some new techniques from it. Make sure to subscribe to Adorama TV for more videos just like this one, and you can even subscribe to me to see some of the work that I've been talking about in this video, some of those lighting scenarios and examples. You didn't hear it from me. Grab whatever lights you have, go out there, make something cool, and I will see you next time.